And great. Okie dokie. Almost forgot about that bit. So let's get started. We're on class 3 and the course is Healing Anxiety and Depression. And right at the beginning, we looked at how anxiety and depression aren't actually the problem. They're the messenger or the symptom of the problem. And so if we want to heal anxiety and depression, we've got to look at what's causing it. What is the illness? What's the disease that results in all of this angst and unhappiness and despair, all of those, feelings, emotions that churn through us every day. So those emotions, they're not the problem. They're evidence of the problem. And so what we're delving into now is what causes them, what causes that churn and that angst and that fear and then that collapse. So this is based on Buddhist psychology. So luckily, you don't have to believe in anything or do anything. You just have to be able to have the courage to look within your own mind, to really check up in your own mind what's going on and use your reasoning and check against your own experience. Does this make sense? Is this what happens? And just like we were talking before, with a sense of like being a beginner so that we can relax, be open-minded, take the pressure off ourselves, don't have to be perfect, understand everything all at once, but have this attitude of kind of curiosity and kindness. So that can be our motivation for today. Like Venerable Robina so often says, the 2 wings of the bird. So we have the curiosity, the attitude of being a beginner, relaxed, interested, courageous. And that's often mostly to do with our own benefit. We want relief for our own mind. And kindness, so yes, kindness to ourselves. We've got to encourage ourselves. And also, like we were saying before, as beginners on the path, we are like little toddlers. We're barreling along. We've got good intentions and we just crash and burn all the time. We hurt ourselves, we fall down and we cry all the time. So we've got to be careful, kind, protective, encouraging of ourselves, not kind of mean. But also kindness, where that is leading us to is kindness then to recognize, oh, everybody else is in the same boat. And in fact, many people are worse off than me. And so then we have a genuine sense of concern and kindness that arises. And this is the way to make the world a better place. That's how we do it, from starting right deep in there. And then it radiates out. Then that's how we can create world peace. So with this motivation of kindness and curiosity, and again, just take a moment to reflect, how's your inner security guard today? That sense of awareness, mindfulness of what's going on, the one that notices the internal weather, the internal kind of tone of your mind or your heart today. So just take like a reading, like a weather reading. What's your internal environment like? Busy, relaxed, without being judgmental, just kind of noting. Just like with the weather, we note what the weather's like and then we prepare accordingly. So too with our mind, we can note whether we're quite buoyant, whether we're a little down, whatever it is, we're not reducible to that one thing. So you can just notice it and name it, and then we can prepare accordingly, which is that kindness and curiosity. So what we've covered in our short time together: don't shoot the messenger. Depression and anxiety are the pain system of the mind. So that not pleasant true, but very important to listen to, because we know what happens if we ignore our pain system with anything physical. We know it just leads to disaster, doesn't it? It's why all those medicines say, if pain persists, see your doctor. So pain is an important system to keep us functioning. And our culture is not set up to listen to depression and anxiety. We just miss it. We just try and mask it all the time. And so, of course, it's endemic. You know, we're in such a, pretty affluent, free society, and yet the levels of depression and anxiety are through the roof. And in Australia, we have the highest rate of youth suicide in the developed world. I mean, it's kind of shocking. So depression and anxiety can be removed because we can remove the causes. And the causes are the disturbing emotions. And we had a look at that family tree, and those disturbing emotions are like the clouds, like the weather system. And sometimes they're really heavy, but they can be removed. That inner toxicity can be removed, but we've also got to stop pumping more in. So we looked at ignorance, the fundamental one that is across the board and is very difficult to identify, but we normally experience it as confusion, indifference, alienation. We looked at doubt, deluded doubt or unexamined doubt. Another way we can think of it is reflexive doubt. So I think there's that kind of saying about being a doubting Thomas. So you just doubt everything as a habit, and it's not constructive. It actually pulls down your own wisdom. So constructive doubt is really important, but this doubt as a habit, it's a real roadblock for us. So we see evidence of how deluded doubt is destructive because conspiracy theories, that impetus to always think I've got the inside knowledge and everything else, yeah, I'm doubting that. It results in falling for conspiracy theories. So that's where doubt and questioning has become the inner bully, has become an inner terrorist instead of a help. Then we've got mistaken views, where we justify our prejudices and our fears, where we think we're a good person, but actually a lot of what we hold to very tightly hardens our heart and makes us inadvertently or even on purpose disregard others or harm others. So we know we've got them because there's always one section of people that we go, oh yeah, I want to help everybody, but not them. So when I was younger, it was like, all human beings matter except the police. The police are bad. Okay, so that's a wrong view, because the police are also parents and fathers and sons, and their pets love them. You know, even though Queensland had terribly corrupt police force. You know, actually one of the jobs that I had when I first left school was in the illegal casinos that didn't even exist. So I've got firsthand experience of really corrupt police, but nevertheless I had to change my view because police are human beings too. So wrong views, they harden our heart and they lead to untold destruction. And then last week we looked at pride. So how pride imprisons us, how our trying to grasp at a sense of importance and having it coming from comparing ourselves to others, how it imprisons us. The moment we feel we're special and different from others is the moment we feel alone and alienated and isolated. Pride also means that we often feel fearful, intimidated, and we're unable to ask for help. And face it, we all need help. Of course we need help, but pride stops us from asking, either by being too proud to do so, we don't want anybody to see that we're losing it, or we feel we're so bad, why would anybody want to help me? And that's the inverted pride. All right, so you can see why we've got most wanted posters with those, because they're not immediately obvious as terrorists. Now, were there any questions that came up from last week's class on pride in particular that you wanted to address before we get going this week? Anything that came up at all? So you can raise your virtual hand in the reactions there, or you can wave at me, or you can put it into the chat. So who's waving? Steve, were you waving at? Yes, go for it.
Yes. Hi, I wasn't here last week, but I did watch the video.
Okay.
And so I did have one thing that I wasn't entirely clear about. You talked about inverted pride as being false humility. But it seems like there is a real thing of feeling less than that is not false. It's not a put on. It's not thinking that you're not pretending that you feel lowly. You actually do feel lowly. You actually do feel less than. So calling it in the language I grew up in, false humility implies you're pretending to be humble.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's right.
But inwardly, you're really feeling superior. But there are many of us who do suffer from chronic low self-esteem. And that's not false. That's not a put on. That's not a con job. You're not pretending.
No. So what we've got genuine humility, right? So humility, taking the good one, it's not a false thing. Humility, there are clearly people that are far better human beings, than me. There are clearly amazing human beings that I just feel humbled at their feet by. But when we experience humility, it's an open-hearted thing, isn't it? We're inspired. And
I'm sorry, I'm not specifically talking about humility.
Wait.
Okay.
So we're inspired, and implicitly we feel encouraged and included. So that's why humility, even though we're low, we put ourselves low, we still feel okay. It's still emotionally actually quite a nurturing feeling because we're inspired. Now that's really different from inverted pride, where we feel that we're worthless. So that the quality of that feeling is quite different. And that is a false pride because it's out of step with reality. So we mightn't be putting it on purpose. Yeah, sure, some people do pretend, but actually that experience of feeling worthless, lowly, why would anybody ever bother with me? That is out of step with reality. It's a distorted identity. So, and that's why we suffer, because it's out of step with reality. And holding on to that creates suffering, because it means then nobody can help us. And when we hold on to that, we identify with being lowly, with being worthless, or thinking, oh, I could never. We think that's me. And we get a solid sense of who we are from that. We invest in it.
Right.
And that it creates damage, but sometimes that's the only thing that we can see to invest in. So actually, what's really interesting is this kind of bleeds over into a form of laziness. So there is a form of laziness that says, there's no way I can get enlightened. And that's actually, it's not true. It's a self-grasping at inverted pride, and it is a form of laziness. So that one is like, poor. It gets me every time, in terms of underestimating our innate potential.
So am I correct that you're throwing out basically any kinds of brain chemistry dysfunction, any kind of psychopathology? You're saying all of those things are false and they're not real, and we just have to think our way spiritually out of them. Is that correct?
Steve, I'm saying that those things, brain chemistry and pathology, are, as much as we're used to thinking them as the cause of our problems, they are also the result. So brain chemistry and how we experience our suffering is a result of our disturbing emotions, as much as the brain chemistry is a cause. It's a two-way street. So this is what neuroplasticity means and why it is so radical. Because mostly we experience it as what happens in our brain if we're neurologically divergent or whatever it is. We experience the results and we think it's just one way. So that's the materialist view, that our brain causes our experience. But actually, neuroplasticity shows that if we change how we think, it rewires our brain. It literally changes our brain chemistry. So it's two-way. So right there, we don't have causality anymore. We have interdependence. And that is radical and unacceptable to a huge swathe of the medical establishment. But it's totally in accord with the Buddhist view. So I'm going to leave that with you, Steve, because that's just, we've set off with a firecracker today.
Okay, all right.
Jan,
I'll be quiet now.
Let's go on. Yes, Jan.
Last week you mentioned, and it's also in the questionnaire, examples of wrong pride, like perhaps you noted cheating on taxes. Now, here's my question about that. I would think there would be a difference, like in a particular ex-president we had who was cheating on taxes and yet living very large, okay, which I think is really damaging. But what about people that truly cannot? I mean, we don't live on a level playing field, and that is a reality.
Yeah.
So what about people that really can't afford their rent and bills and they are skimping on taxes? I mean, that's not a delusion. That's a reality of it. I mean, I don't know how it is in Australia, but here in the States, that's a reality.
It's certainly not as bad in Australia as what we see happens in the States. But so what I'm talking about isn't the cheating on taxes. What I'm talking about is the motivation. And that makes all the difference.
Yes, gotcha. Got you. Okay. Intent,
so
motivation.
Intent. And there is a big section in our society that thinks it is good to look after number one. It is good to cheat on your taxes as much as possible. It goes into the real estate market. There's a huge section of society that think it's good to build little tiny dog boxes and make a profit off people living in them rather than building livable houses for a wonderful community.
Right. Gotcha.
You know, so
Gotcha.
It's the thinking that
that's the first thinking I was talking about.
Yeah.
You know who.
So that's the pride in wrong methods, where we might have been brought up to think, you know, forget about politics, just make money. And we might be really good at that. And that's what our parents taught us. And we might have a real pride in that. But as we know, it's not enough. So that's why it's one of the easier ones, because it's just clearly a wrong pride.
Right. I got you now. Thank you very much.
So, woohoo! Good on you, folks. Let's get on then. So today we're looking at, and you get a hint here, a love heart with a dagger through it, the difference between desirous attachment and love or kindness, between affection and attachment, craving. I don't know about you guys, but it's very easy to get confused between the two, and sometimes it seems like they flip into each other. So we're going to look at how attachment arises, how attachment cheats us, why it has such a grip on us, and the antidotes, what we can do to lessen or remove attachment so that we can actually really enjoy our life. Because attachment or craving, desirous attachment, that's that state of desire and discontent, it's a universal problem. And luckily, universal psychology will help us with this. There is a universal solution. So this one, when we're looking at anxiety and depression, we saw how there can be many causes for it. So actually, desirous attachment is the main cause of anxiety. There can be other things, but you know, like 90% cause of anxiety comes from how desirous attachment plays out, how it has us in its grip. So luckily, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can actually enjoy the Buddha's insight into how this all works. So we've done our motivation already. Let's have a look at desirous attachment. And okay, so we've got our most wanted posters, and this most wanted poster, Angelina attachment. Not many of us would look at lovely Angelina and think, oh, there goes a terrorist. I just think, oh, lovely, sexy lady. But this is the thing. How do we recognize those inner terrorists, the inner bullies, the afflictive states of mind and emotion? It's difficult. So this most wanted poster can help us recognize attachment. I've depicted attachment as an air hostess, a really nice looking air hostess, because attachment goes with us. Wherever we are, we have attachment. Always travels with us. Whether we're aware of it or not, it's there. We are in the desire realm. It's right there in the whole machinery. When attachment arises, at first, it feels good. We know it by the term anticipation, looking forward to something. And if we're not careful, it goes into full-blown attachment. So we have, it kind of arises in two stages. We have the nice feeling, the anticipation, all the various exaggerations and things. And then because we're unaware of this process, we grasp onto the object, and then clinging arises. And it's the clinging that causes us suffering. So the characteristics of attachment, there are three main things. One, it exaggerates the good characteristics. Two, it projects attributes that are not there. And three, it's biased. It sees only the good qualities. So favoritism. So let's go through a few of them. For example, with the exaggeration. So yeah, definitely some things are more pleasant than others. Some computers are better than others. Some dinners are more tasty than others. But what the mind of attachment does is it exaggerates the good qualities that are there and makes them more than they are. So we can think about, you know, our favorite job, our dream job. And when we think about our dream job, we're thinking that it's going to do a whole lot more than just what a job does. We think it's going to solve the problems in our life, give us meaning, fill up that empty hole. Often when people, before they have kids and they want kids, they're thinking, if only I could have kids, you know, it would solve everything. It'd bring me outside of myself. It'd be transformative. You know, I'd be able to do something really meaningful. Also in there is that thought, oh, it's going to be a little me running around. How excellent. Two of me is better than one. So all of this, there's a grain of truth, but it's a big exaggeration because, you know, as we know, 20 years later, after we've had the kids, there's still that big black hole in our heart. There's still that craving. There's still that, what's the meaning of my life? What have I done? The kids go up and go, and we're still left with that. We may have a wish for a holiday, and we have this idea that the holiday will bring everything, will bring relaxation and joy and whatever. But as we know, when we go on a holiday, as they say, wherever we go, there we are. We bring everything along with it. It's often very, very tiring. So the exaggeration happens all the time. We build it up just because of our focus. We know we're exaggerating because we say, I'll be happy when, or I'll be happy if, ... On top of that, we project qualities that are not there. And that's also why I've got Angelina, attachment, because whenever we see someone who is beautiful looking, without knowing it, we project good character traits onto them. And we think, oh, they're a nice person. You know, we look at Angelina attachment and we think, nice lady, kind, she's smiling. But as we know, remember like years ago when Naomi Campbell, who was at one stage apparently the most beautiful woman in the world, well, physically looking, and she got on a plane and she chucked a tantrum and she got thrown off the plane and it made the news. And I'm thinking, why? Like, how many people throw tantrums on planes? It happens all the time. Why did this make the news? It made the news because she's beautiful. And we just assume if you're beautiful, you're also good. And if you're not, it's newsworthy. Attachment also does this in more sneaky ways where, for instance, if someone's in a suit, well-groomed, we think they're trustworthy. This is how charlatans work. People come and knock on your door and they look all good and with a suit and they say, hey, trust me, give me all your money. And oh, okay, seemed legit. So that's the mind of attachment, falling for the appearances, imputing characteristics that are not there. And I remember when I was a child and people would say, oh, what's your idea of your favorite boyfriend or your favorite girlfriend? And it was often, you know, tall, dark, handsome, or whatever it is, blonde and buxom. It was all about the look. No one said, I want a kind, honest person. So we're just going by the look and we're imputing that they'll also be kind and honest and treat me well and be secure and everything. And then when we end up with the really awesome looking person and they turn out to be a bastard or really flaky or unable to support us, they're just out the door the minute there's trouble or difficulty, or we get sick and they leave us because, you know, they don't like how we smell anymore or something, then we're devastated. But actually we've imputed all of those character traits of loyalty, for instance, onto the looks. Happens every time. One of the other things, that's right. So apparently in business, if you have good teeth, you do much better in business than if you've got bad teeth, because people impute good positive character traits onto your teeth. So I come from a whole nation of people with bad teeth, that my Latvian background, you know, it's just like, you know, and then there's the English teeth too, isn't there? So, you know, we have this idea and we impute characteristics onto it. And Americans are famous for big, beautiful white teeth, and we impute good qualities onto it. And then we just have this, you know, huge array of con men, con women wandering around going beauty. Okay, and then on top of that, we're biased. So the bias in the mind of attachment is a kind of favoritism that just sees all the good qualities. And this usually happens when anticipation is arising. So that's right at the beginning when attachment is arising. You know, if you want to buy a new phone, this happened to me. I was like looking at all the different characteristics of all the different phones, and I found one. I really like the color. I like the shape. I like the this and the that. And the more I thought about it, the more I start thinking, yes, this and that, fantastic. And it's really hard to make your mind go, now hang on a second, what about the drawbacks? It's like, no. Or you first fall in love with someone or have a crush on someone and you're just thinking about this wonderful thing and that wonderful thing, and your friends are going, oh God, how can you go out with them? You know, they do this and that. We go, la, 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 not listening. No, it doesn't matter. We put it aside. So this bias and favoritism is because we like thinking about all the good things and we really enjoy it when attachment is first arising. But then what happens? After a while, the situation reveals the rest of the story. The person reveals their human foibles, and we're incensed, we're devastated, and we think there's something wrong. There's something wrong with the person. They've changed. They weren't the right one after all. And we don't see that it's actually just reality coming to the fore. And it's been our favoritism, our complete bias. And then we think it's their fault. It's them. They did it. They disappointed me. I need a better one. But actually, the degree of suffering we experience is directly proportionate to the degree of attachment that we have. So say that again. The amount of suffering that we have is directly proportionate to the amount of attachment that we have. The amount of suffering that we've had in a relationship isn't due to love, it's due to attachment. If it was a huge suffering breakup, there was a huge amount of attachment. So this is why attachment is one of the very, very worst terrorists, inner terrorists, because so difficult to spot. Because when it arises, it feels good. So attachment, it's like drinking salt water. And actually, I have a little thing to read to you from The Perfect Mirror, Adrian Feldman, Thupten Gyatso, very dry humor, quintessential Aussie humor. So anyway, he says in his little chapter on desire, if we were asked to make a list of our problems, most of us would soon fill a page with complaints, many of which would include a lack of fulfillment of our desires. But how many of us would list desire itself as a problem? Buddha taught that desire is one of our greatest problems. Desire is the state of mind that craves pleasure and wants to possess a particular object of pleasure, either another person or a material thing, as our own. Desire exaggerates the pleasant qualities of the object, so it seems to be much better than it actually is. And desire is blind to any negative qualities. When we are attracted to a particular person, desire makes them appear to be the most beautiful person in the world. Their body is perfect, their voice, their clothes, everything about them is blessed with a certain magic. Physically, we desire their body. Mentally, we crave their recognition of us as an individual. We need their smiles and their love to confirm that we are a good and lovable person. At night and during the day, we cannot stop thinking about them, and it's impossible to concentrate on study or anything else. If our friends point out bad qualities of the person we desire, we reject their advice. We simply cannot see any faults. But desire is not happiness. It's an agitated, unhappy state of mind, which believes that if we do not get what we want, then we cannot be happy. When our desire is unfulfilled, we cannot eat, we become irritable, we cannot relax or be friendly with our family. We hate life, we even end up hating ourselves. If we do finally get the object of our desire, we soon become disenchanted because we realize that the object was not as good as we thought it was. Or we just become bored and dissatisfied and start looking around for something or someone else. If we check up, the happiness of experiencing pleasure is only partially due to the feelings of touch, taste, music, or whatever is our object of desire. The main reason for our happiness is a sense of relief that our desire has stopped. Unfortunately, the cessation of desire is only temporary, and very soon the cancer-like craving for pleasure again awakens and begins to destroy our happiness and peace of mind. So it's quite a dire situation, and it has us in its grip. So the first thing to recognize is that desire, that feeling of desire or anticipation, you know, at the beginning, that's not happiness. It's actually an agitated state of mind. Attachment, the mind of attachment does travel with us constantly, like a constant thirst. And it is a constant thirst because we keep on trying to get the satisfaction from outside of ourselves. But the happiness is not in the things. The happiness doesn't come from the person. The happiness comes from our capacity to feel content, our capacity for happiness. So just like drinking salt water, you know, we're so thirsty and we see that sparkling water and we have a sip and it's cool and refreshing, and for a few moments we feel better, but then our thirst comes back again double. And if we're able to continue drinking that salt water, we can get all the stuff and all the things and all the relationships. The thirst gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The more we follow craving, the more dissatisfied we are. So then what's the difference, say, between attachment and love, kindness, affection? So we know it's attachment because even though at the beginning it feels good, later on it's as if it flips into its opposite. It flips into impatience, disregard, hatred, disappointment, betrayal. That flip, that's the other side. When that flip happens, we know that's attachment. Love turns to hate when attachment doesn't get what it wants. So let's have a look at how it arises, the cycle. So we've got our following desire, like drinking salt water. We all have this craving. That's natural. But it's what we do with this craving, and because it happens unconsciously. And the first thing that happens is we grasp at true existence. We hold tightly to how things appear. Colloquially, we can think that it's like judging a book by its cover. And this happens, we don't even know it's happening, but we're doing it all the time. It's when we see that beautiful looking person, we want to be with them because we think they're good, they're nice, they're kind. So we're judging the appearance as if it's much more. So the first impressions that we have dominate. The things that we like, we grasp at them. So the thing here is there's the judging the book by the cover, but there's also the grasping at it as if it's true. And actually that's the thing that causes the suffering and the whole chain reaction to happen, is that believing the appearances. So the reason I have pink hair is because it's my exam to you, because I put on pink hair because it's my little test for everyone of, are you going to believe the appearance and think I'm a ditzy bird, or are you going to go, what's below the appearance? And so for me, it's a shorthand. It's like it sorts everybody out. When I meet people, if they just think, oh, I'm just some, you know, crazy cat lady, no worries, see you later. I don't even want to talk to you anyway. But if people go, oh, gee, that's surprising, you're actually smart, then I go, aha, you're the one I want to talk to because you're not believing the appearance. So, you know, it's the grasping where we get stuck, believing the appearance. That's where all the difficulty happens. So, I mean, I do this with people too. I do exactly the same thing. I fail my own exam all the time. And I've had to train myself to actually make sure I go and talk to all the so-called invisible people, because they're invisible for a purpose too. They've gone and put their own exam and gone, I'm not going to look flash. I don't care about that. I care about what's inside. So, you know, the grasping, it's a tricky thing. we believe our initial perception. That's the problem. And the main initial perception is that our happiness comes from them, from the thing, from out there. That's what we're believing. So then, of course, naturally, we start thinking about all those nice things and we start exaggerating all the good qualities. We just see the good qualities. We're just not looking at the other, the balance. We're building it up, putting in more projections, more assumptions. We have this fantasy of happiness. If I get married, I'll be happy. If I have kids, it'll be great. If I get the job I want, I'm sick of renting, I'll buy a house. It'll be fantastic. So all of these things, there's a whole lot of bias and projections that we're putting in. And while it's going, it feels good, it feels great. Then the next thing happens. Then we want to have the thing. We like the thing, now we want more. I like the look of the person, now I want the person. I like the idea of money, now I want more money. Or if you're having a really great night out, now let's drink more, let's do more. So this wanting to possess, that's when it really kicks in. We become absorbed by it, obsessed. We want it to be mine. So then other destructive activities and harmful speech arise. We may even have an affair with our best friend's husband or wife. We may even start just taking things from work and get away with it and think, I could take a little bit more. So no one sets out to ruin a friendship, to ruin a marriage. It's just that we're driven by the desire and we're not looking at the consequences. No kind of criminal goes out and steals stuff thinking that they're going to end up in prison. If they did, they wouldn't do it. They go out and they're just thinking about they want the stuff and I'll be able to get away with it. And they're ignoring that they might get caught and end up in prison. So it happens again and again and again. It makes a very productive movie industry. Then we have all the other disturbing emotions arise that come from attachment. So jealousy, huge one. So you might really care about someone. It might be contaminated with attachment. You may, wish all the good for them, but you can't bear anybody else talking to them. Or you get so worried that you'll lose them if they have fun with anybody else, if they go out with anybody else. So anxiety of loss comes in. The more we love and enjoy something, the more nagging at the back of our mind is this thought, what if I lose it? I couldn't bear losing it. So, the better the car that you have, the more you worry about it getting scratched. If you drive an old bomb of a car, you don't care. You're relaxed. And in fact, someone told me that when you get a new car, you're really, really uptight about it until you get your first scratch and then you can relax. So, you can kind of see even just now how anxiety and worry just naturally arise from the attachment. And then it really kicks in and we think we cannot be happy without that object. If they leave us, it's the end. I can't bear it. If we lose the thing, if our house burns down, we get the sack, we lose our looks, we can't be happy, we can't bear it. So that comes from this grasping a true existence. It goes through this whole process. And then when we continue with it, when we actually believe, we can't be happy without this, then our grasping becomes more. And the whole cycle, goes round again. So now, questions, comments. Marianne, tell me, what's your question?
Guys, so I understand what you're saying. The only thing I'm like confused about is like when you're saying like if you really want, you're very attached to wanting to get a specific type of job that you would feel happiest in, or that you couldn't improve yourself and grow from. What's wrong with wanting to strive for something like that? Like, is there a point where you're like too attached to that, and there's like, or like, how do you decipher
that's
that?
right. That's a good question, because I mean, there are some things that are not attachment, and we'll get into that, because there's nothing wrong with wanting a good job, but the suffering that comes along, the stress, the anxiety, the worry, all of that doesn't come from wanting the good job. It comes from attachment. And what it does is it ruins the good job. So when, for instance, we have the thought, if I don't have this job, I cannot be happy. And I've had that thought, if I lose this job, that's the end. Catastrophizing. So that's the mind of attachment. It's completely out of kilter with life, because actually, you live through it, you get another job. So it's the attachment that's caused the suffering. It's also attachment that thinks this job will solve the rest of my life's problems.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But in fact, this job brings its own problems, and it may solve some, but it may bring others. So again, it's the expectations, the assumptions, that's all in that basket of attachment. That's what contaminates the job. It contaminates our enjoyment of the job. It actually even makes us blind to when the job changes. Then we go, oh no, it's changing, and we get all tight. We can't even see it may actually be changing for the better. So
yeah, I've experienced that before.
yeah, that's right. So it's not the job that's the problem. It's the attachment to the job. That's the bumper sticker. It's not the job that's the problem. It's the attachment that ruins it. So it's the attachment that ruins our relationships as well. So I had a relationship with a guy that his whole life was driven by desire, and it really motivated him. He was a poet, he was a great writer, and he was very possessive of me. And his possessiveness got so tight, he got really, really jealous. Whenever I talked to another guy, he just couldn't bear it. And so I kind of tried to keep the peace. So I stopped talking to guys. But I still had a job. I was working in a bar. So, that he was really jealous of anybody that I was friendly to in the bar. So I gave up my job. And then he started thinking about all the people that I'd had affairs with in the past. And he got really jealous about that. And then I thought, what can I do here? I actually can't do anything about that. So the relationship ended because he couldn't bear it. So the attachment, the jealousy, the possessiveness ruined what actually was quite a good, passionate and creative relationship. We made art. It was great. Sunny, you've got your hand up. Oh, hang on. Mute.
Yep. Thank you. My question is about the opposite. I'm at a point in life where I'm pretty comfortable, and financially and with relationships and so forth. And so my problem is, I guess, attachment to comfort, because where do I get the motivation then to progress further on my goal, which is not comfort? My goal is to practice, be on the path, but yeah.
Yeah, so that's why renunciation is so important, because renunciation actually just calls comfort for what it is. So we need support, we need resources, we need comfort, we need space to be able to progress. But usually when we get that, then we sit back and we think everything's fine. And that's attachment, because attachment is overvaluing the comfort and thinking this is enough. And it's enough until the comfort goes. So until we get sick, until COVID comes and we can't leave the house, and then our comfort goes, and then our peace of mind goes. So it's quite a, we kind of got to prepare that when we are in that comfortable space, that we use it. But the mind of attachment doesn't see things that way. The mind of attachment overestimates and thinks everything's fine, I can kick on back now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the thing is to find the motivation when I'm not being pushed by, oh, I need to find a new apartment, or I need to find, you know, I would love to have children, or I would love to be married, or I would love, you know, I don't.
So when you're content, Sunny, then the starting point there is to share. So you share your energy, you share your time, you share your wisdom, your enthusiasm, you know, so it's like the give back time because you've got the extra.
Yes.
That'll keep you going. Abelardo, I missed you last week. How are you?
Well, I was here last week.
Were you? Oh, I didn't see you. Maybe you didn't have your camera on. How are you going? What's your question?
Okay, I've asked this question to other people and I get different answers. In Western psychology, it's said that for a baby, having a secure, trustworthy attachment is very healthy. And babies who don't have that have traumas. Now, but at certain stage in human development, living by attachments becomes negative, the way you're explaining. So it seems a bit paradoxical. And in the 12 links of dependent origination, we know that desire and attachment plays a very important role in continuing the reproduction cycle and bringing people back into samsara and so on. So, yeah, how can we?
Okay, so there's two things in there, Abelardo. So, the one is that with the definition of attachment, so we've got to go with the Buddhist definition, the Buddhist psychology definition of attachment. That's what I'm working on. In Western psychology, like there's attachment therapy, and that's a different form. That's actually more, if you look at how it functions, it's love, it's loving kindness. So there is a discrepancy of words. We've got to get to what the definitions are. And if we get the definitions of what attachment is in Western psychology, which is a huge range, we've got to go, okay, so in attachment therapy, this is their definition. What's the equivalent definition in Buddhist psychology? Well, it's actually not attachment, it's kindness and care. And that should help stop the discrepancy there. But also there is a process. So as a baby, they, you know, we need care. We're completely vulnerable. And usually our mother, but our parents are everything. They are everything. They're almost us. And then there comes a stage where we separate a bit and we notice there's them and there's us. And, you know, then a whole lot of belligerence comes up.
Right. Making
that distinction. And then later on, when we discover that our parents are fallible, that they have faults, that they've done something really nasty underneath, aren't we betrayed? Don't we feel like that is unforgivable? And that's because we have experienced them as being like God. And the moment we discover they're not like God, it's so unbearable that we may spend the rest of our life trying to make them see us how we are or act how we want. So all of that suffering comes because we discover they're not like God. They're just an ordinary human being like me. And I just came along into their life and I'm not even the biggest thing in their life. So the suffering comes from the attachment and from becoming more realistic. So we grasp onto that, we go, bad parents. You know, well, the fact that they didn't kill us, you know, that is a miracle. And here I am. Thank you. Doesn't matter if they like me or not. Doesn't matter if they're alive or dead. Thank you. I'm here. But our attachment has built it up so much, and that's why we suffer. You know, that is so extreme. So So that was the one thing. Oh, the other thing, then the 12 links. So we have this romanticized idea that, you know, if we didn't get attracted to each other and have sex and have babies, then there would be no world. So we need it. In there is this romanticized idea of the world. It's like what we have with nature. We say, oh, well, it's just nature. But if you've ever seen a nature documentary, the carnage, the fear, the suffering, nature is horrible and terrible. I can't even watch nature documentaries. Everybody eats everybody else except the vegetarians, and everybody eats the vegetarians because they're the yummiest. I mean, that's nature. You can't say that that's nice or good. So the whole thing about Buddhist psychology is to become free of that cycle of torment. That's pretty radical.
Thank you. There's a lot that we could discuss, but maybe some.
Yeah, there is a lot. Yeah. Also, it is possible to have kids and minimize your attachment and actually be a good parent and have happy, healthy, adjusted kids. You can only do that if you release the attachment. Number one, if you stop hoping that they're just a little me out there. You know, once you just realize they're their own selves, they bring their own stuff, they're completely different to me. Oh my God, I'm living with an alien. You know, that's a good start. Release the attachment, the expectations, the projections, the bias, the favoritism. Yeah. And then the relationship has a chance to breathe and flourish. So it is possible.
Yeah. Well, as far as I know, Tibetan Buddhist mothers are very caring. Anyway.
They are, but it doesn't work in the West, is it? Because they let all their kids run riot up until the age of 7 and beyond. So the Tibetans let their kids run riot till 7, and then it's like rules. But in the West, it's run riot and no rules. And, you know, doesn't work, does it? I mean, it makes me really sad because I was, you know, I was brought up a Buddhist, and there was a whole cohort of kiddies brought up in Buddhist families, and I'm the only one who's still Buddhist. And it's because those families just let their kids do whatever they wanted. They just had this hippie ideal, oh, we're going to let them make their own decisions or whatever, and they didn't educate them. And I was lucky because I was educated by the lamas. I went to teachings. I was educated by my mother about ethics. Didn't necessarily believe it, but at least I got the education. So I had something to fall back on. That's just an aside, but you know, it makes me really sad because a whole lot of those kids now, you know, they're dead, they're drug addicts, they're whatever, but they're not happy. So attachment, if we follow it, it's uncertain that our desires will be fulfilled. You know, we keep following. When we get the thing, it's often a disappointment. You know, you get the shopping, you don't even open it when you take it home from the bag. You have your favorite song, and then after the 30th repetition, it's no longer your favorite song. So the object is illusory. We keep on chasing it. If getting our desires worked, we would be satisfied by now. But it's like this mirage we keep on chasing. The other negative minds arise. Even if we are satisfied, it doesn't last. So at best, it's temporary. So, you know, Sunny, this comfort that we have at the moment, when we have it, enjoy it while it lasts. Like really enjoy it. Let yourself enjoy it and share it. Because guaranteed, whilst we're still in samsara, it'll come to an end. It'll change. We don't have to worry about that. Leads to unskillful actions, cheats us of enjoying ordinary pleasures. Our attachment cheats us of enjoyment. It's such a tragedy. It's so ironic. You know, jealousy and possessiveness ruin the relationship. Don't enhance it at all. It keeps us endlessly going up and down and up and down. So we're going for the short term, like the sparkly glass of salt water. We never get the satisfaction that we crave, and it distracts us from making our life worthwhile, from doing what really matters. So because we think that our satisfaction and our happiness comes from out there, from the things out there, from the relationships, from the music, from the job, we're constantly chasing those things at the expense of looking within, at the expense of cultivating a good heart, a sense of satisfaction, of open-heartedness, open-mindedness, cultivating good quality relationships. Putting in the effort, like maybe going through difficulties, but happily, because we've got the big picture in mind. So attachment stops us from doing that. Attachment to the status quo, attachment to reputation, attachment to comfort. It'll stop us like putting everything on the line and going for it. Makes us very fearful. And it means that we chase the little short-term pleasures at the expense of what can be lasting peace, happiness, joyousness, fulfillment. Attachment, in fact, distracts us even from just making art, from inventing things, just from worldly good things, let alone the big picture of liberation and enlightenment. So what attachment is not? So this should go to answering a couple of the questions before. So there are some things, some passions in life that are not attachment, that are actually, they're not out of step with reality. They are realistic. And when they're realistic, they turn out well, because the attachment, it's distorted, isn't it? It's biased, there's projections, assumptions, expectations, worries, all of that kind of thing. So number one, it's not the object that's the problem, it's our craving for it. It's the craving that's the problem. So we don't have to give up money. We don't have to give up our house. We don't have to neglect our looks. All of those things can be useful, you know. So again, like with my hair, I put on hair and eyebrows and earrings and whatever, because I try and make an effort so that if you have to look at me for an hour and a half, it doesn't hurt your eyes at the very least. But if we present nicely, people like being with us. So then we can build community. It's that simple, isn't it? It's like the lamas, they're always smiling at us. They make us feel happy and accepted. And then that creates this nice environment. And if we have a lama, a teacher who's very stern and gruff with us, it's quite difficult, isn't it, to apply ourselves. We get scared. And the only reason we continue is because we know they love us and care about us and are incredibly wise. But even that, even just our looks, you know, it makes life so much easier for us to help others. So the problem with just looking after your looks is the craving and attachment that we put on them, and thinking that if I look good, I'll feel good, I'll be a good person, I'll matter more. And if I look bad, or I got funny teeth or something, then I'm worth less, or I'm embarrassed. So all of that, that's the attachment. That's what creates the suffering. So it doesn't mean that we have to aim at being bland or indifferent. And this was my biggest thing, you know. I thought, okay, attachment, especially like having a crush on people, that, oh, agony. Of being obsessed with people and think I can't be happy without them. I just thought, I can't keep on going through this. The answer is no more relationships. So I don't know if some of you come to that conclusion. Clearly it doesn't work. We are social beings. We need others. We need others on so many levels to reflect back to us what's going on, to encourage us. You know, the whole guru-disciple relationship is because we need feedback. We need to debrief to be able to develop. So we need relationships. And a good, healthy relationship is one where people see qualities in us that we don't recognize. And then we feel good. We kind of rise into it and we can blossom. And for a while that really works. That's the good thing about relationships. But then attachment comes in, especially the craving and thinking that all those good feelings and happiness comes from them, instead of they've woken those qualities up in us. So when they go, or when they change, or when they go off with someone else, then we can't see those qualities anymore. Then we collapse. But actually, you know, if someone's seen those qualities and we've been able to blossom into that good human being, when they go, that's okay. We've developed from it. So again, the relationship isn't the problem. It's the distorted mind state, the craving, the grasping, the thinking that the happiness comes from them. That's the problem. I have this great thing to read from Thupten Chodron, this great little book called Buddhism for Beginners. It's an excellent book because it's all question and answer. So you got your question, you can look up your answer. And the question is, yeah, wouldn't life be boring without attachment? So this is like my old boyfriend, you know, he was terrified. If he didn't have desire, he'd just go bland, he'd just flatline. But she says, no, in fact, it's attachment that makes us restless and prevents us from enjoying things. For example, suppose we're attached to chocolate cake. Even while we're eating it, we're not tasting it and enjoying it completely. We're usually either criticizing ourselves for eating something fattening, comparing the taste of this chocolate cake to other cakes we've eaten in the past, or planning how to get another piece. In any case, we're not really experiencing the chocolate cake in the present. On the other hand, without attachment, we can think clearly about whether we want to eat the cake. And if we decide to, we can eat it peacefully, tasting and enjoying every bite without craving for more or being dissatisfied because it isn't as good as we expected. As we diminish our attachment, life becomes more interesting because we're able to open up to what's happening in each moment. Rather than wishing we were with people to whom we're attached, we'll appreciate being with whoever we're spending time with at present. Instead of being attached to our physical appearance and consequently feeling constant dissatisfaction with how we look, we'll simply do what's needed to keep our body healthy and clean, and we'll be satisfied with how we look. So I'll tell you a little story about this and attachment. So for a while, we had a wonderful Tibetan Geshe come and teach here. He was resident Geshe at Chinrezig Institute. And he'd come on Friday nights, stay overnight, and then, you know, sometimes he'd take us all out for lunch, all the volunteers. And so one night, maybe after the weekend teaching or something, he was going to take us all out for dinner. And so the driver, she said, oh, we've got this great hotel, great restaurant that we can go to. It's fantastic. We'll go there. So we got in our cars and off we went, and the restaurant was closed. Right next door was this other restaurant. So I was like, oh, instead of stuffing around, let's just go there. And so for the whole dinner, when we had the food there, she was just so devastated how bad the food was. She was really disappointed in the food. She got completely obsessed about it, comparing, you know, to the other restaurant, and so sorry, and we shouldn't have gone out on this night. Meanwhile, the rest of us, I don't care if I just had baked beans on toast. Here we were having dinner with the Geshe. Like, how can you beat that? But this is the attachment that we get so fixated, it spoils what we have. I mean, it's funny, but it's really sad. So it's not the object, the food's not the problem. Good food is great. Boring old dinner, it's boring, but it's not the main thing, is it? It's our craving and our obsession with it that causes the suffering. We often confuse love and genuine affection. So here, I love this photo. It almost brings me to tears. You know, such care, gentleness, affection from His Holiness. You know, that's not attachment. That's real care. We know it when we see it. We can genuinely love somebody. It can slowly be corrupted by attachment, but we can do something about it. So the difference between, say, love and being in love. So love, you love the other person. You want the best for them. You do anything for them. You have your heart filled for them. Being in love, you want the other person. You want to have them. You want to possess them. So one's loving the other person, one's wanting the other person. Really different direction of where the feeling is going and who it's for. Not all desires bring suffering. So this is also what I discovered after multiple relationships. At the base of every yearning to be in a relationship is this yearning for connection, for wholeness, for transformation, to become a better person, to be moved, to be passionate about life. There's nothing wrong with any of that. That's great. That's actually, you know, that's like the will to enlightenment, the will to liberation. But what happens is we take all of that and we put it onto another human being, a limited, ordinary human being just like us. We put this entire package onto them and expect them to do it. And for a while, they might wake up all of these things in us. Then the relationship crashes and burns and we leave. And then we think, I'll never be happy. And so we settle for less. We give up our passions and our yearnings and our desires, and we just try and get more stuff or take more drugs or have more entertainment or sleep more or whatever it is. But actually that yearning for wholeness and transformation, that is a yearning for enlightenment. That is a sublimated wish for enlightenment, to end this duality, to liberate our minds from the prison of all the disturbing emotions. So we have this urge, and because we can't see any further, because we're not educated in the psychology of our mind, we think, oh, I want to be in love. It's so limited. Actually, what we want is liberation and enlightenment. It's right there at the core of our being, everything that we're doing, but we just put it on this other thing. So small-minded. Rip ourselves off, put everybody else through hell. It is possible to be in a relationship where you both recognize that all of this urge actually is this sublimated urge to liberation and enlightenment, and you can support each other in that journey. So bodhisattvas have a huge attachment, yearning, desire to liberate sentient beings and bring them to enlightenment. And that's not attachment. Do you know why? Because it's not exaggerated. It's not out of step with reality. It's realistic. It's possible. That's why bodhisattvas don't burn out. But we put all of that onto a fallible human being where it's not possible, where of course we're going to be disappointed unless they're enlightened. So of course we burn out, we flame and burn. So you don't have to give up any of your passions or desires. You just got to put them in the right place. So with realism, the more realistic we are, the more happiness we have. So I found this is a good way to calibrate my mind, because if I find myself getting jaded and cynical and hard-hearted and a bit resentful, I know that's the attachment kicking in. It's not realism. That kind of jaded cynicism, that's not realistic. That is really biased. The more realistic we are, the more open-hearted we become, the more naturally happy we become. So if we're not becoming more naturally happier, we know we're missing a piece of the puzzle. So again, the amount of suffering that we experience is directly proportionate to the amount of attachment that we have. And attachment meaning a distorted relationship. So here's some remedies. So these remedies go across the board of the 3 scopes, lower, middle, highest scope. There's something for everyone in here, and some will be more relevant than others. So number 1, remembering impermanence and death. Things will change. Our lifespan is limited. So, Sunny, this one, we just remember, wow, you know, while I have my health, while I have my house, enjoy it, because it will change. So let yourself enjoy it and use that joy. So instead of worrying, oh no, what if it changes? We just got to remember it will change. That's guaranteed. So we can relax. Of course, it'll change. So let's enjoy what's there. If we recognize that every single relationship that we're in will come to an end, that's a fact. People will grow up and leave us. People will die. We will die. People move overseas. Everything comes to an end. So when it does, let's do it graciously. So instead of like, oh no, what if it ends? Think, yep, it's going to end. So what are we going to do now? What are we going to do before it ends? And this really is like when people have a palliative diagnosis, you know, you've got 3 months to live or something, and you have enough love and support around you, then you treasure every moment. And you can just sit there and have a cup of tea with someone, and you're not doing anything exciting at all. And it's so poignant and meaningful because you're just really enjoying what's there. Why? Because you know it's going to come to an end. So we'll kind of stop chasing things like that if we know. So there's the subtle impermanence, things change, things will degenerate. Our bodies will start sagging and melting off our frame. So what else do we like about the person apart from their looks? You know, because we're all going to end up looking like our parents. So there's got to be something else that we like. So impermanence and death, number 1, go-to remedy for attachment, just puts everything in perspective. And we really appreciate things the moment we're threatened that they're going to be taken away from us. So we can preempt that. The other one, I love this one. Recognize the impurities of the body. So our body, it's a sack of guts and all sorts of disgusting things in really nice packaging, you know, and it gets a bit leaky every now and again. So this one, the impurities of the body. Here we are, we have this nice package, but you know, if you actually see somebody's guts, or if someone vomits, or you go to the toilet, they haven't flushed the toilet, you see what was inside, you know, we ourselves want to vomit, we're disgusted. Yet all of that inside is right there, right now, with all of us. So the disgust comes from attachment. Because attachment just looks at the package and goes, oh, how beautiful. And it's completely biased to what's inside. And it thinks because what's inside looks disgusting, it is disgusting. Well, actually, what's inside looks disgusting, but it's important. So important. So it's attachment that actually makes it look disgusting. So with the recognizing the impurities of the body, what's all going on inside, actually, if you got rid of attachment, you'd look at all of the workings of your digestion and your bowel and you'd go, wow, how amazing. It does it all without me even having to organize it most of the time. How fantastic. It's attachment that goes all one way and then flips over to disgust. Both are totally out of kilter with reality. So part of the homework, the TV homework, is to get online and find anything from Gunther von Hagens, the great anatomist. And he did this series of anatomy classes in one of the medical colleges in England, you know, dissections and things. And his enthusiasm about the workings of the anus and the bowel is fantastic, because he just really sees what a miracle it is that we have a body that works like this. So you get over your immediate disgust. I mean, it's kind of like, ugh. But then it's a really nice re-education. So again, you know, we're the package, we're the whole package, the packaging and the inside. And it's attachment that ruins the insides, that makes us think they're disgusting. To the extent that if someone gets sick and their body's malfunctioning and it's not such a nice package anymore, for instance, many marriages dissolve because the one partner can't bear it anymore. The attachment's too great, the disappointment, the flip side's too great. And that's a real tragedy. Can be like, if you're the person that leaves, can be so shameful to you, you know, you bury it deep inside. But again, it's not them, it's attachment that does it. Okay. Then higher scope is where, instead of putting someone on a pedestal, you view others as if they're your family. So instead of having, you know, a god or a goddess that you want to possess, that you put on a pedestal, you actually color them in as full human beings with all of their hopes and wishes and yearnings and foibles. We forgive them a lot more of their faults. We're much more realistic about them. We have a real interest in their life. So with our family members, you know, so if there's someone that you're sexually objectifying, if they're older than you think of them instead as your mother or father. If they're the same age as you think of them as your brother or sister. If they're younger, you think of them as your children. And that way it brings the whole gamut of human relationships in, instead of just projection and possession. It fills them in as a human being. So this one is particularly good for if you suffer from sexual objectification, but it's a much bigger, it's a big-hearted one than the one beforehand of the impurities of the body. So the impurities of the body will lessen physical desire for sure, but it may flip over to disgust. So that's no good. We've got to keep our warm-heartedness towards others. So this one, it's kind of like, you know, the old chestnut of, I remember in Twin Peaks, where the husband goes off to the brothel in the woods, and you know, seeing all these girls in the brothel, it's very creepy in the woods. And unbeknownst to him, his daughter is working in the brothel. And it's like, while it's all these young girls and there's no one to do with me, no problem. But the moment it's like his daughter, it's like, oh no one does that to my daughter. So it's like, you know, don't do unto any other person's daughter than, you know, your own. So this way of thinking of others as your family can fill in the whole rest of the relationship. Then, okay, we've got 3 more to go. Whoa, in just a moment. Meditating on emptiness. Now, I tried to find an icon for emptiness, and that is a challenge in itself, but I came up with a light bulb, because light, anything within Buddhism to do with light, is to remind us of clarity, luminous emptiness. And what we meditate on or remember is the object does not appear, does not exist in the way it appears. Our first impressions, how it first appears, that's not the whole story. How the object appears is going to depend on a whole lot of things, and those things are continuously changing. With attachment, what we see, what appears to us, is something very exaggerated. And even if we are aware of that, what we project onto that is permanence. So, you know, I had this beautiful cat, and I knew, oh, you know, I'm attached to the cat. I'm projecting all of these things onto it. I tried to lessen my attachment, everything like that. But what I forgot was impermanence. So I projected permanence onto the cat. And of course, one day the cat died and I was so shocked. So everything else I'd managed to do, but that one, oh, dang, and just about killed me. You know, I was more upset about that than when my mother died. So the meditating on emptiness or dependent arising helps re-educate ourselves and really cover all of our bases, relax our mind, become aware of what the situation is, and that gives us peace. How we do it is we think about other possible scenarios. So we have the thing that we like, we're full of anticipation, we love it, and then you just play like devil's advocate. You put in another scenario. What if this thing changed? What if that thing changed? And we play it all out. It's the consequentialist school. And as we play it out, then we see how our attachment meter goes up and down. And this way we get a more realistic view of things. So how things don't exist, how they appear. I've got time for another little story. So there was a lady that was coming to one of my classes when we were having the in-person classes, and she loved this spot right in front on the left. She said, this is the best spot in the Gompa. This is the one I want. I'm like, oh, great. She's got her favorite spot. But then she'd go, oh, Miffi, can you just turn the air conditioning off because it's coming right on my neck? And gee, you know, like I just got to go get another cushion because this is really uncomfortable. And would you just mind sitting back a little bit because your feet are poking into me on the back? So you can see what's happening. She's got this idea, this is my perfect spot, this is the best spot, and everything else is an aberration, like is not it. I love this example because it's so blindingly obvious to me that that best spot is all of those things. But everything else that I look at, oh, that nice pair of shoes or some nice luggage, you know, I do exactly the same thing. So this is what attachment does. It just looks at those good things. Everything else is something else we can fix later. But actually, we've got to look at it. It's a dependent arising. So yeah, it could be the best spot if these things changed. And so, of course, then we try and change those things. It's like going off right on the wrong direction. The thing is to recognize, actually, where is the best spot? The best spot is when you're happy, is when you're content. Then wherever you sit in the Gompa, it's great. So Venerable Roger, you know, Rinpoche's amazing attendant, I asked him, how do you keep it together with all the pressures? And he said, I just say to myself, remember, samsara always has problems. Like, oh, okay, that's really good. Samsara, it's never quite right. It doesn't mean we have to give up on perfection. We just have to look for perfection in the right place. So all of that comes under that heading, meditating on emptiness and dependent arising, to question your assumptions and expectations and play out different scenarios like a consequentialist school, and that'll get us going. Then from that, we get a conviction in reality and in our ability to work things out, to liberate ourselves, to save ourselves. So this is conviction or confidence in the Dharma. And this comes from applying this stuff. And you know, Venerable, just like you were saying, just talking about this stuff, how it helps us, how just getting used to thinking about things in this way, re-educating our mind, encouraging us. We get an experience immediately of change, and that gives us confidence. So this will grow, this conviction reality, becoming more realistic about things, and our sense of happiness will grow and our confidence will grow naturally by applying it. We'll see the results. So instead of looking out there, grasping it at contaminated happiness, we can look within. So as an artist, this one I particularly like because I don't want to give up my passion for art, but I know that my passion for art is leading me somewhere. And one day when all my Dharma books burn to a crisp or get lost in a flood, it's okay, because what's happened is I've got that experience in my mind and it has helped me on the Dharma path. The last one, cultivating love and compassion for others. So here we have, love is wanting the other person to be happy. Being in love is wanting the other person. It's really as simple as that. One, it's all about me. The other is it's focused on them, their benefit. So most of the time our love is contaminated by strings attached. You know, it's because they treat us nicely that we love them. And then when they treat us badly, for whatever reason, you know, they're overcome by their own inner bullies. Then if we no longer love them anymore, that wasn't love, that was attachment. So we can tell, how much of our relationship was love and how much was attachment by how you feel about your ex. So if you still feel warmly in your heart, if you still care about what happens to them, that was love. If you don't care about them, or worse, if you're happy when you hear bad things happen to them, that was attachment. So I'm kind of in this situation where I do genuinely care about what happened to my ex. I don't like him. I don't want to necessarily spend time with him, but I genuinely care about him. And what's interesting is when I only, speak to him every like 2 or 3 years, and the only time he calls is when something's gone wrong in his life and he knows I'm the person that'll actually be honest. I'm the one who'll tell the truth, and I'll do it because I understand him and I care about him, so I'm a safe person. So eventually when things get so bad, he'll call me up and I'll tell him what's what, and I'll do it with a joke. And, and so we're actually really, really good friends like that, but we don't hang out. So this is what we want to end up with, that even when we come together in a relationship, we do the best that we can. Inevitably, it comes to an end in some way, but we want to have ended up being better people. And now we have one more person in the world that we genuinely care about, despite how badly they acted. So then that's what love is, caring for the welfare of the other, regardless. So this often is why people want to have kids, because we are forced to transform our mind in this way, but it doesn't always work, because we can get so disappointed in our kids. Our attachment, sometimes kids turn out bad. It's not the fault of the parents. They've brought their own stuff with them, and they end up, being thieves or junkies or murderers. They all had parents. And the devastation that comes from that, and the devastation comes from the attachment and wanting them to be in a way that they're not in this life, and then being unable to bear it. So really just focusing on wanting the best for the other person. And so the way that I can do that, especially in the heat of the moment, especially if you're in a relationship at the moment, is to think, well, in a year's time, well, what I'm arguing about matter? Do I really care about them? Under everything, yeah, I really do care about them. And then also you can get realistic and you think, well, under everything, I actually have needs. I need someone who supports me emotionally. I need someone who doesn't sabotage my projects. That's just a conventional need. And it's okay to have those. It's okay, for instance, to think I need to be in a relationship so I'm safe and financially supported. That's fine. We just have to be honest about it. And actually, if we're honest about it, it's not attachment. It's being honest. It's far more likely then you have a really good functional relationship of give and take. So before I summarize, questions, comments about any of these 6 remedies? Anything at all? Anyone want to put their hand up? Are you all ear-bashed now?
I have a question.
Yes, who's this?
This is Ellie.
Ellie, yep, go for it.
So you say that love is wanting somebody else to be happy, but can you get attached to somebody else's happiness? So
Yep.
like, okay.
You can. And that that's kind of how our love can get corrupted. So because we don't know what's happening, it can naturally quite easily get corrupted like that, but equally you can wind it back. So often this happens just with, say, first responders, you know, ambulance drivers and nurses, everyone that's in these really high pressure situations where you really want to help the other. And because all of our focus is going outwards, then we start depending on what's happening outside of us for our happiness. And so that if someone does die, if we can't help them, it's unbearable. So it's because everything we get stuck, we go back out again. So in a relationship or with kids or with our pets, we want them to be happy. And then we start thinking, it goes out like our focus to them, and we start thinking, if they're not happy, then I can't be happy, then I can't do anything. So it's quite a subtle corruption there. And why is because we've conflated what's happening out there in the relative world with our aspiration. So we can always want the best for others. And sometimes we can give them the best, and other times we're powerless. But that doesn't have to stop our wish for them to be happy. But if we get attached to the result, then when we don't get the result, then it flips into being unbearable or hatred, or they've betrayed us. So why do we get attached to the result? Because we start believing the appearance is out there and we forget about our aspiration. So again, we can bring it back to like a practice of loving kindness, of just grounding yourself again in, oh yeah, that's right. I really do wish the best for everybody. I really do wish everybody gets everything that they need, all the resources that they need. Feel really how much you want them to be happy and how you love to make them happy, and rest in that, and then go out and just do what you can. And that should stop us having it corrupted or falling down or getting jaded, all of those, you know, flip sides that happen. Always keep the aspiration in your heart, regardless of what's going on day to day. And just to give you a little bit of encouragement, you know the great Bodhisattva Chenrezig with the 1,000 arms and the many heads. Have you seen that picture? 1,000-arm Chenrezig? Yeah. So the story about how Chenrezig got those 9 heads, or 11, but the 9 faces, was basically a bodhisattva having a nervous breakdown. So Chenrezig was trying to help sentient beings, and every ounce of his being as a bodhisattva, and yet you blink and there's more suffering sentient beings. So how a bodhisattva has a nervous breakdown, he couldn't bear it so much, his head split into 9 pieces. But because his attitude was about benefiting others instead of all imploding on me, then it gave him 9 different faces and 9 different perspectives to be able to help others. So even his nervous breakdown became a bigger, better Chenrezig. So And also remember, Chenrezig comes from a background of being the one to do with wisdom. There's only the great compassion, you know, that came later, but he's in the Heart Sutra, you know, he's supported by wisdom. So there's a lot of hints there for us. Chenrezig never gave up his aspiration to help others. And even when everything was lost, even the experience of it being lost galvanized him even more. And why? Because he didn't grasp at the appearances. He didn't get attached to those appearances out there. Steve, did you put your hand up? Oh, hang on, you got to unmute. Here we go. Ask to unmute. Yep,
it's actually Joanne that has the question, not me.
Yes.
Oh, Joanne.
I want to thank the last person for the question they asked, because in your response, it was so helpful to me, because I am a nurse. And when you were talking about how in your job, you are focused out, right? And I'm just taking it in. So I will watch this again, because it's going to take time for me to really clarify it. But
Yep.
I have such a struggle with my family's health. In what you spoke about was just so meaningful to me, and how I go into the struggle with healthcare, and what you said about what I do as a job. It's really helping me to clarify that the attachment to their health, just like she asked, can there be attachment to their happiness? I've been attached to their health in a similar way, that I've really struggled if I don't sense my family is taking good care. And then I also can take that as a failing on my part somehow, some way.
I know, that's the whole thing, cascades on, doesn't it? And then before you know it, bam, you've collapsed. But the beginning of it was that attachment. And so it's this really wanting the results.
Yes.
And we start focusing on the results more than our aspiration.
Thank you.
So those, the 4 immeasurable thoughts, always building up your aspiration. Yes, I'd love to be able to help everyone in the very best possible way. I'm always going to have that aspiration, regardless of whether I can or not.
Thank you. That's been so helpful.
So
Thanks.
then even when you take time off, or even when you're furloughed or anything like that, you can still have that aspiration and build that aspiration up.
Yes.
You don't have to feel like you're doing nothing, because you can build up that inner strength, that impetus to care for others. Yep. So they're 2 separate things. One is the going out there and doing the thing, but what it's motivated by is that aspiration.
Thank you.
So Joanne, thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you.
So everybody, to summarize, desirous attachment focuses inwards. It's tunnel vision. So the moment we feel that we're focusing inwards again, it's like warning bells. Genuine affection expands our heart to others. It's an open-hearted, vast. With our satisfaction, if we want to feel content, doesn't come from following craving, and never does. It comes from actually cultivating a sense of contentment, or cultivating your capacity to be happy with whatever's going on, to go, it's good enough, it's fine, what I have is good enough. Developing a feeling of contentment, and then you can really appreciate those little things. So someone said in the comment there, who's really sick with leukemia, this is what they're doing. And without attachment, if we can get rid of attachment, then we are free to enjoy our life. Then we can really enjoy things, really, really, really. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, Loving yourself is fine, but it doesn't work if the method isn't right. The best way to really love yourself is to renounce each self-cherishing thought. That's that tunnel vision, the inward one. As His Holiness the Dalai Lama often says, the best way to love yourself is to cherish others. The only practical way to be selfish is to cherish other beings. Romantic obsession is different from sincere love. In becoming romantically obsessed, you hallucinate about the other person, you desire, and maybe that person hallucinates about you. But it's important to try not to be caught up in that hallucinated view, to look at the person with a different view, the view of wisdom and compassion. Less desire means more freedom. As desire lessens, the space for genuine love expands. So it's nice, we get more, we get fuller, the less attachment that we have. So we've got the self-reflection sheets. There's the worksheet. Please fill in the worksheet. Again, it's just a couple of lines for each one. And then there's a really nice meditation, meditating on offering your body as the 4 elements. So this is a great way to release attachment to the body and to turn our attachment to our body, which is very, very, very deep, into generosity. So to turn it into something great, to enjoy giving it away. It's such a nice meditation. The TV homework, oh my God. Well, our entire TV and movie industry is filled with examples of attachment, but here are just a few. So my favorites, botched or botched up bodies. I just try and watch every single episode I possibly can, because you can just see that here are people that think that their body is them, and then they put all of their effort into making their body better. And the only thing that's going to happen is it's going to degenerate, get old, and die. So, but you can just see it at play, and it's just so heart-wrenching, as well as I just love all the gory bits. Body Bazaar is a really fantastic one. Another one is Amazing Medical Stories, and that's about people that have really severe difficulties or really severe deformities, and often they'll put them in with other people that are quite pretty looking, and then who has the better state of mind, and how these people have come to be really fully rounded human beings, because they've had to realize, I'm not just my body, I'm not just my looks. It's a really humbling experience, and very, very, very inspiring, the things that people go through, you know. Banged Up Abroad and its offshoot, Young, Dumb, and Banged Up in the Sun. These are excellent. These are about young people going overseas thinking, oh yeah, I'll sell some drugs, make a pot of money, it'll be great. And then totally the opposite happens. But what is amazing about these shows is what happens to them when they're in prison and how their mind changes. And that too, it just shows the innate human intelligence that we also have, as well as the dumbness. So it's really inspiring. It makes you feel better about human beings. 24 Hours in Emergency, any of the emergency shows, they're also really good, because a lot of those will show how what really matters is just genuine human care. So unless you're Joanne and you already work in that. But the one with the emergencies, they often say, you know, no one wakes up today thinking, oh, I'm going to end up in hospital, I'm going to end up nearly dying. But the people who work there know this is possible. So they've already got their death and impermanence meditation happening. So we too can get it happening. Anyway, I'd just say, enjoy your homework. There's another one, MAFS, Married at First Sight. Oh, it's a car crash of a show. I haven't actually been able to get myself to watch it, but if you can, it's pretty revealing. Next week, we're going to look at how anxiety reveals our deepest values, and how to listen to the wisdom and anxiety, because anxiety is the result of attachment. So we're going to see what we can do about it. So I'm sorry I've gone way over time, but I hope it's been beneficial. And please let's dedicate that all of our courage in looking within, good efforts, good intentions, natural good-heartedness, all of that, that you can support that and nourish it and encourage it and be a loving human being to yourself and to others. The best way to love yourself is to generate renunciation, to let go, to be happy with what you have. Best way to love others is to have care and affection and concern for them, regardless of how they treat you. So feel all of this like a beautiful rainfall of light washing into your mind, illuminating your mind, relaxing your mind, to come back to whenever you need to develop those realizations, to liberate your heart, to really enjoy life, because, you know, the Buddha is smiling because the Buddha is free of attachment. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for sticking it out. Thank you, Sunny, for hosting. I hope to see you next week.
Thank you, Miffi. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you for every minute, Miffi.
Thank you very much. Good
Thank you,
night.
Miffi.
Thank you.
Good night.
See, we don't want to leave.